I remember the exact moment my world shrank to the size of a phone pressed against my ear. 2 weeks before Christmas, my father called me at my desk, and his voice carried none of the warmth that should exist between a parent and child. He told me not to come home for the holiday dinner, explaining that my presence would create awkwardness for Julian, his 30-year-old stepson, who had only been in his life for 3 years. No hesitation, no guilt. Just that flat declaration that I was no longer welcome in the house where I grew up. I sat there in my office staring at the wall, feeling something fundamental shift inside my chest, a quiet acknowledgement that I had been erased from my own family portrait, without so much as a backward glance. So instead of roasting chestnuts and exchanging gifts by a crackling fire, I found myself hundreds of miles away on Christmas Eve, navigating a desolate stretch of highway that had become a death trap. The blizzard came out of nowhere, transforming the asphalt into a slick sheet of polished glass, while snow fell so heavily I could barely see the hood of my SUV. Most drivers pulled over to wait it out, but the bitter cold was already seeping through vehicle doors, turning cabins into freezers as temperatures plunged dangerously low. I had been driving since early morning, trying to outrun the storm, but the weather had other plans, trapping me in the middle of nowhere with nothing but howling wind and mounting dread for company. Just after 11 that night, the world exploded into chaos. A blur of red brake lights flashed ahead of me, followed by the stomach-churning screech of metal crumpling against metal as vehicles collided in a terrifying chain reaction. My military training took over before my brain could even process the fear, and I grabbed my emergency medical kit from the back, stepping out of my warm SUV into a frozen hellscape that looked like something from a nightmare. Twisted wrecks dotted the highway like scattered toys. Shattered glass glittered under the dim emergency lights, and dazed victims stumbled through the snow, some bleeding, some screaming, some so shockingly silent that I feared the worst. Every instinct I had developed over a decade of service kicked in, and I began moving through the wreckage with surgical precision. The cold bit through my uniform like tiny needles, and the wind roared so loudly I had to shout just to be heard over its fury. I found families trapped in crushed vehicles, children crying in the back seats, while their parents desperately tried to free them, and drivers wandering aimlessly through the storm with concussions they didn't even realize they had sustained. My hands worked automatically, applying pressure to wounds, wrapping thermal blankets around shivering bodies, and directing the able-bodied to help those who couldn't help themselves. At some point, I organized a makeshift rescue team from the stranded motorists, assigning them tasks that would keep everyone alive until professional help could arrive through the blocked roads. Time lost all meaning as I moved from one smoking wreck to another, my breath crystallizing in the air with every exhausted exhale. I remember pulling a young family from their overturned sedan just seconds before a jackknifed semi-truck skidded helplessly into the space where their car had been sitting. The mother sobbed against my shoulder, her 2 children clinging to my legs as I guided them toward a safer area away from the chaos. There was no room for fear in those moments, only action, only the relentless drive to keep people alive until the storm finally released its grip on the highway. I stabilized broken bones with improvised splints, treated hypothermia with whatever blankets I could scavenge, and talked panicked victims through their terror while the wind continued its relentless assault. The hours stretched into an eternity of frozen fingers and burning lungs, but I refused to stop moving. By the time dawn broke over the horizon, painting the snow in shades of pale gray and weak gold, emergency crews finally began arriving on the scene. Helicopters thundered overhead while ambulances and fire trucks navigated the treacherous roads, and I found myself still working, still directing, still refusing to rest until every last person was accounted for. News crews had followed the first responders, setting up live broadcast feeds that would carry the disaster into living rooms across the country. I barely noticed the cameras as I knelt beside a crushed minivan, my tactical jacket wrapped around a terrified 5-year-old girl while firefighters worked to cut her free from the wreckage. Her mother reached through the twisted metal to hold my hand, her eyes filled with desperate gratitude. And I stayed right there until the paramedics finally lifted her daughter to safety. The moment that little girl was pulled from the wreckage, her parents collapsed around me in tearful embraces, their sobs of relief echoing across the frozen highway while cameras captured every second. I had no idea that millions of people were watching that scene unfold on national television, including a man sitting comfortably by his fireplace hundreds of miles away. The same man who had told me 2 weeks earlier that I wasn't good enough to share his holiday table. My phone started vibrating in my pocket just after midnight, persistent and demanding, and when I finally pulled it out, I saw my father's name glowing on the screen. I answered with a steady voice that betrayed none of the exhaustion or emotion swirling inside me. And I heard something I had never heard from him before: genuine terror. "Sweetheart," he stammered, his voice trembling so badly I could barely understand him. "Why are you on the national news?" I could picture him sitting in his warm living room, surrounded by the family he had chosen over me, watching his daughter covered in frost and blood on television, while Julian and Brenda sat beside him in stunned silence. I told him exactly where I was, describing the crash site in flat matter, of fact tones that seemed to drain all the arrogance from his voice. He tried to explain himself, claiming he had been worried sick, but I cut him off, my attention suddenly caught by something glinting in the snow just ahead of me. The high-end sports car that had triggered the entire disaster sat abandoned on the shoulder, its driver long gone, having fled into the storm like a coward while families bled and cried in the wreckage behind him. I walked closer, reading the license plate to the state trooper beside me, and then I noticed the registration sticking out of the cracked glove compartment. As I leaned in to read it, my father's voice continued chattering nervously in my ear, but I barely heard him because Brenda's frantic whispers had suddenly become audible through the phone. She was panicking about something, her voice rising in pitch as she tried to quiet whatever chaos was unfolding in their warm, cozy home. I looked at the name on the registration, then back at my phone, connecting the dots in a single horrifying second. Julian, my father's golden boy, the man who had replaced me in Arthur's heart, had been the one speeding through the whiteout, the one who swerved into oncoming traffic and caused the pileup that nearly killed dozens of people. And instead of staying to help, he had abandoned his car and fled back to the safety of his mother's house, pretending he had been asleep the whole time. I read the registration details directly to the state trooper, my voice cold and steady despite the freezing air, and I heard Brenda shriek in the background as police lights suddenly illuminated my father's driveway on the other side of the phone call. The chaos on my father's end was almost poetic: Brenda's hysterical sobbing, Arthur's desperate stammering, and the authoritative voices of officers who had tracked the vehicle registration straight to their front door. Julian's carefully constructed image dissolved in an instant as handcuffs clicked around his wrists for felony hit and run, reckless endangerment, and a list of charges that would destroy his reputation forever. Arthur begged me to intervene, his voice cracking with the realization that he had thrown away his own flesh and blood for a criminal who abandoned victims in the snow. I listened to his pleas with a strange sense of detachment, feeling no satisfaction, only the quiet certainty that justice had finally caught up with the family that had discarded me without a second thought. In the weeks that followed, I received official commendations from military brass and state representatives, recognition that meant more to me than any approval my father could have ever offered. Julian faced multiple felony charges, his future shattered by his own reckless choices, while Brenda scrambled to salvage whatever remained of their tarnished reputation. And Arthur, the man who had so casually uninvited his own daughter from Christmas, called me every single day, his voice now dripping with desperate repentance instead of arrogant dismissal. He left tearful voicemails, begged for forgiveness, made excuses about Brenda's manipulation, and even tried to plan a grand celebration in my honor so he could stand beside me and soak up the national praise. When I finally answered his call, I used his first name for the very first time, Arthur, and the sound of it seemed to break something inside him. I told him that he had made his choice 2 weeks before Christmas, choosing his new family over his own blood, and now he had to live with the consequences of who those people truly were. I hung up without yelling, without crying, without giving him the emotional reaction he so desperately wanted, leaving him alone in the quiet house he had chosen over me. Standing on that frozen highway, watching the sunrise over the carnage, I had finally understood something that had eluded me for years. Being rejected by my father was never about my worth. It was simply his inability to see it. True family isn't built on convenience or superficial charm, it's forged in moments of crisis, through actions that demonstrate who you really are when the cold winds blow. I had lost a father who never truly stood up for me, but I had reclaimed something far more valuable, my own strength, my purpose, and my unshakable peace of mind. Looking back now, I realize that Christmas Eve on that icy highway was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it showed me exactly who I was without his approval. I'm curious about you. Have you ever been pushed aside by family only to discover later that their rejection was actually the gift you never knew you needed? Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from, because I love seeing how far my story travels across the world.